got Mike 3.
Appreciate it. A lot of your families aren't getting the help that you could be getting. Little guy, better stuff.
15 and counting. Ready to take the video live. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 and counting.
Good evening, everyone. The U.S. government said today there was no way they would meet the new demands for the hostages' release. Then it accused the Iranians of not taking good care of the hostages. Robert Pierpoint reports.
The Carter administration today stepped up its pressure on the Iranian government by charging the hostages are now being mistreated. State Department spokesman John Tratner delivered the charges.
We've reason to be concerned about the health and treatment of several of the hostages and believe they are not receiving adequate medical attention.
Mrs. Bruce Langan, wife of the highest-ranking American hostage, who is confined to the Iranian Foreign Ministry, added her voice to the administration's charges.
I think the impression has been given that the hostages are all right and that the families are all hearing from them. This is not so. I believe there's 18 families who have had no word since July.
The newest Iranian demand is that the U.S. must deposit $24 billion in an Algerian bank that is sort of a bond against returning the Shah's wealth and settling claims against frozen Iranian assets. Today, U.S. officials called that demand, quote, unreasonable, and a wife of one of the hostages called it blackmail. In Washington, D.C., Ronald Reagan named 4 more people to his cabinet today. The new energy secretary will be former South Carolina Governor James Edwards. While governor, he often tried to cut down the size of government agencies. He wants to eliminate the Department of Energy. The first black name to the cabinet is Samuel Pierce, a New York lawyer. He will run the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Pierce is a former member of the Nixon administration. James Watt is a lawyer that leads a group which fights environmental laws. He will head the Department of Interior. Environmental groups are very upset over Watt's appointment. Jean Kirkpatrick is the first woman named to the cabinet. She will serve as United Nations ambassador. She is currently a professor at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. There are still 2 empty spots on the Reagan cabinet. One of them is Secretary of Agriculture, the other is Secretary of Education. But today Reagan seemed pleased with the way that his cabinet was shaping up. Jerry Bowen reports.
En route to his semi-annual hearing checkup, President-elect Reagan commented on the emerging makeup of his cabinet. The message he is sending environmental organizations, for example, many of which object to the appointment of Colorado Attorney James Watt to the Interior Department.
Well, I think a message to the whole country. A common-sense man who is an environmentalist, reasonable one, but who also can handle the problems of the Department of Interior.
Reagan said the process of background checks may be causing the delay in naming Illinois Agriculture Director John Block as Agriculture Secretary. Reagan replied yes when asked if Block was his choice, but later retreated and said reporters should wait until tomorrow for the official announcement. Reagan says he has yet to ask anyone to head the Education Department, which he has pledged to dismantle, and he gave little hope that appointment would be announced before Christmas.
Later today, Reagan's transition team confirmed that Illinois Agriculture Secretary John Block will be named to head the Federal Department of Agriculture. The official announcement comes tomorrow. The Interior Department is getting ready to sell oil leases on 23 million acres of Alaska's North Slope. The department is asking for comments on what acres should or should not be leased. The actual sale of the leases is scheduled for sometime before August of 1982. And the Chrysler crisis went to its union leaders today. They said they would help the company get the new loan guarantees it wants, but not without concessions. Bob Fa reports.
Today, after a bruising 3-hour meeting, union leaders from Chrysler plants throughout the country agreed to help, deciding in a surprisingly close vote to reopen contract talks with the company.
We want to make certain there's equality of sacrifice. We want the corporation to describe to us in detail the sacrifices that are going to be made by the managerial group.
The vote was close, partly because many union leaders oppose giving up the auto workers' cost of living allowance. When negotiations begin in early January, the union will also demand assurances on plant closings and will argue that if workers have to share in the company's misery, they should also share in any profits as well.
Wells Fargo Bank was the first bank in over 6 months to actually lower its prime lending rate. The bank lowered its rate to 20.5% today. Many smaller banks do the same, but the larger banks are still holding out at 21.5%. Tom Coyne looks at weather. That's next. Stay tuned.